we had a section on defining atheist and agnostic.
Okay. The
You didn't
reason
want
I
to go
didn't,
through it.
yeah, the reason I wasn't sure if you wanted to do this one or not, because this whole thing, I wrote it before I knew the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy definition. So there's a philosophical definition of atheism. There's a colloquial.
That's right. It's like I said. I assumed you thought that this would just get into the weeds, and that's true. But for people who are interested, I did a whole article on this. Who is an atheist? So on my blog, I can give you the link to that too. But who is an atheist? And I go into these issues. Like there's a philosophical definition, there's a colloquial definition, there's different definitions in different contexts. The ultimate answer is everyone's an atheist about one God or another, and everyone's an agnostic about one God or another. And so it's really a question of what actual aspect of it do you want to focus on.
But on the question, does a God exist? You cannot be philosophically, just purely philosophically, you cannot be an agnostic and an atheist. They are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. There's not really, so you're talking about the definition of atheism, but the problem is there's multiple definitions of agnosticism.
Right, but
so
if you follow this, there will be a flow chart on the screen right now.
Yeah.
If following the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, I am not an atheist. I am a soft evidential agnostic.
I disagree with that in different ways, but for people who want to know my take on this, who is an atheist? That's my article on it, and I think I do mention that I discussed the Stanford definition as well. For people who want to get into that issue, I don't really see the point in haranguing people over this. So like if someone's going to like harass you for using the word atheist, I think that's just stupid. Like they know what you mean, and that's all that matters, right? So as long as people know what you mean when you use a word, then there's nothing wrong with yourself an atheist, for example, or even pointing out like agnostic refers to state of knowledge, atheist refers to confidence level, etc. You know, you can go into that into detail, but if you're going to obsess over whether someone is an atheist or not, I think someone must have another agenda behind that.
We're talking about the same guy right now. We just haven't said Steve McRae's name. If that's the hill he wants to die on, so be it.
Right. It's a dumb hill to die on. But anyway, there are much more pressing issues in the world.
Every illness and injury that has ever been cured by the power of prayer could also have been cured by natural or scientific means. If all things are possible through prayer, we should not only see the miraculous remission of cancer, but also the spontaneous regrowth of missing limbs and eyes. But alas, we see neither of these happening. On Twitter, I sometimes ask Christians to name one thing that they have ever seen in answer to prayer that only a God could do. For most, that's the last I ever hear of them on the topic. But one gentleman recently responded that he had seen a child resurrected in his arms and had personally been to a morgue where the dead were returned to life when the name of Jesus was spoken over them. I told him that was fantastic, and I asked him to please go to all the hospitals and speak the name of Jesus to all of them there and cure them. I told him that I would believe in his God when I saw the pandemic vanish as he spoke healing to everyone. He told me he couldn't do that because God had a purpose for the pandemic. Christians love to make fantastic claims of things that their God can do through them, but then they have excuses as to why they can't repeat the feat or transfer that power to something else.
God personally killed over 2 million people in the Bible. That's not including the Great Flood, famines, plagues, or destruction of the entire cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Satan only killed 10 people.
Now you gotta ask yourself, who's the fucking nut here? I mean, anybody with common sense, there go that word again, common sense, would know my man over here killing motherfuckers left and right. He done killed over 2 million motherfuckers. My man over here only killed 10 motherfuckers probably because he had to. You don't know what happened. But 2 million compared to 10, I think I got a better chance of staying with my man over here because I might be living tomorrow, you know what I'm saying?
Whoever wrote Mark didn't get any of it from Paul's letters. I mean, Paul says almost nothing about the human life of Mark. I think it's much more plausible that Mark is the original source of what we think of as the narrative of Jesus. And whether there's any historicity to that or not, we'll never know. And everybody else got it from Mark.
Well, it came after the Pauline epistles, but
right.
I've talked to more than one apologist that think not only Mark, but Luke and Acts is pre-Pauline, which blows my mind. I don't know what they're smoking.
That's such a fringe view that
that's a fundamentalist.
Yeah.
The thing about Mark, I don't think the question about Paul is very interesting as it relates to Mark, because Paul tells us almost nothing about Jesus's life. You don't get a ministry from Paul. You don't get a single sermon. You get, very, very few quotes of Jesus at all. Pay your preachers and don't get divorced is about all he says. He just says nothing about Jesus's birth other than that he was born of a woman.
We actually have a presentation on that.
The only part of Jesus's life that matters to Paul is the crucifixion and resurrection. That's all he needs. He ignores the rest of Jesus' life.
Right.
So Paul would have not necessarily cared about a gospel, because he doesn't care about what Jesus did as a living, breathing human being. He just needs Jesus to stand there and be pretty and die and then rise again. All he needs is the resurrection. Be damned to the rest.
We've got that. The slide that we have in our discussion of Jesus and Paul has a list of bullet points of the things that Paul knew about Jesus that he wrote down. And there are only 5 things. There's literally 5 bullet points. That's all Paul knew. Anyway,
in fact, I was thinking about that. I know Owen and I are not mythicists, but for the people like that want to argue that Jesus didn't exist at all, the lack of any biographical details from Paul is one of the things they point to. For Paul, it's just Jesus lives in some mythical realm and just shows up and dies, and that's it. He has no human life.
Outer space, Richard Carrier says.
Right.
Increasingly, the idea of a war on Christmas has turned things like holiday greetings and decorations into potentially divisive political statements. People who believe Christmas is under attack point to inclusive phrases like Happy Holidays as liberal insults to Christianity. For decades, these debates have taken place mainly on conservative talk radio and cable programs, but in 2016, they finally burst into a much grander stage, the presidential election. But let's back it up. What exactly is the war on Christmas? According to History Matters, there has been what historian Stephen Nussbaum called the battle for Christmas for centuries. This is a fight over how Christmas has been celebrated. During the 300s, Constantine tried to Christianize pagan festivals by declaring the sun god Sol's birthday, December 25th, to be Jesus' birthday. But it never really worked. Memories waned of the pagan origins, but traditions were still celebrated in mainly pagan ways, such as drinking, feasting, and sex. The most organized attack on Christmas in the United States came from the Puritans, who banned celebrations of the holiday in the 17th century because the practices were so debaucherous. Now, thanks to people like Clement Clark Moore, Charles Dickens, and Queen Victoria, Christmas made a comeback in the early 1800s as a secular, drunken celebration. Thanks to capitalism, however, it was quickly domesticated into a holiday about giving gifts to your children. And because capitalism, that extended to giving presents to everyone you know. Once it was popular again, Christianity renewed its efforts to Christianize the holiday. But the holiday has never been celebrated primarily as a religious holiday, even to this day. While Christians have consistently lost the battle to make December 25th a distinctive Christian holiday, it didn't stop them from finding it very useful for vilifying their enemies. For example, in the 1920s, Henry Ford claimed that Jews were waging a war on Christmas in his anti-Semitic tract, The International Jew. In 1959, the right-wing John Birch Society claimed that one of the techniques being applied to communists to weaken the pillar of religion in our community is the drive to take Christ out of Christmas. In 1999, Peter Brimelow complained about liberals using phrases such as Happy Holidays and government Christmas parties being called a celebration of holiday traditions. The idea of a plot against Christmas gained wide publicity when Fox News promoted a 2005 book, The War on Christmas, How the Liberal Plot to Ban the Sacred Christian Holiday is Worse Than You Thought, by radio host John Gibson. Mr. Gibson said he was amazed by the uproar his book caused. He said it primarily focused on an issue that rarely happens anymore: educators and local officials banning non-religious symbols like Santa Claus or Christmas trees out of mistaken beliefs that displaying them violated the Constitution. It never actually dwelled on the political implications of happy holidays. That didn't stop Bill O'Reilly from espousing that it did, or from returning to the theme of a war on Christmas again and again every consecutive year. In 2012, he told viewers that liberals were tying the Christmas situation to secular progressive politics because they wanted a quote-unquote new America, and traditional Christmas just isn't part of it. Rational people understand that the phrase Happy Holidays is just a short way to reference all the holidays celebrated from Thanksgiving to New Year's Day. The term Happy Holidays dates back to at least 1863 and was even uncontroversially popular in the 30s and 40s. The song Happy Holidays, sung by Bing Crosby, commemorates this time and is still played in shopping centers annually. A 2020 YouGov survey revealed that 2 in 5 American voters believe there is an actual war on Christmas actively taking place in the United States. This is mostly down political lines. A study by Fairleigh Dickinson University found that watching Fox News increased the likelihood that someone would believe in a war on Christmas by 5 to 10%. 72% of Republicans agree that Christmas is under attack, while 69% of Democrats disagree. This is due largely to right-wing pundits embellishing and outright lying about events that occur over the holiday season. Many have repeatedly debunked the myths, sadly to little avail. David Call Johnson's 2015 book, The Myth That Stole Christmas, calls out many of the lies. For one, religious floats were not being systematically banned from parades. No school in Plano, Texas banned the colors red and green during Christmas time. Ridgeway Elementary School in Dodgeville, Wisconsin didn't change the lyrics to Silent Night to eliminate all references to religion. While it's true that Walmart once encouraged but didn't require its greeters to say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, this is because a lot of their customers aren't Christian and don't celebrate Christmas. And while it's true that Democratic Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee didn't call the tree in Rhode Island State House a Christmas tree in 2001, neither did the Republican Governor Donald Carcieri. Finally, yes, there have been a number of lawsuits in response to government entities like courthouses or schools favoring Christian ways of celebrating Christmas. But such actions do not constitute a war on Christmas. When viewing the lawsuits, they're simply asking the government to be more inclusive of all of its constituents in efforts to protect against the violations of the separation of church and state enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. I've been unable to find any effort making the celebration of Christmas or the phrase Merry Christmas illegal. There's just no evidence of a quote-unquote war on Christmas. Christmas is a federal holiday in the United States that, according to a Gallup poll, 93% of Americans reportedly celebrate. Daniel Mock, director of the ACLU program on freedom of religion and belief, said his organization has defended people's rights to engage in Christmas-related activities and has even represented a Pennsylvania inmate who wanted to organize a communal prayer on Christmas. On the topic of the supposed war on Christmas, Mock said, and I quote, "Christmas celebrations in this country are alive and well, and as long as the government itself isn't promoting religious doctrine, those celebrations are entirely constitutional," end quote. I think I found a better term than war on Christmas to kind of talk about what's going on here. According to dictionary.com, a persecution complex is an irrational and obsessive feeling or fear that one is the object of collective hostility or ill treatment on the part of others. I think we find our winner there. Merry Christmas.
And over the next 45 seconds or a minute, I was completely focused on not killing anybody on the ground and preserving my own life. I succeeded at both of those goals.
You were an atheist in a foxhole in that moment.
I was. In fact, right.
Yeah, it's the same deal.
I did not bargain with God to save my life. I was a little too busy taking care of that job myself.
Your training has to
Bargaining
kick
with the
in.
wings of your airplane.
If you're spending any amount of time praying or thinking about anything other than your training kicking in,
Right.
you're decreasing the likelihood of your survival anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you can happen to figure out which of the 6,000 gods is real, and then you pray to that one. But if you're praying to any of the other 5,999, then you're SOL anyway.